I am Tracey Shearer, and I'm so happy that you're back for another episode on storytelling. We've covered a lot about storytelling, why it's important, tips and tricks, where you can use it, um, and just some of those different aspects that we don't always think about that storytelling has the power to do. What I wanted to talk about today is the area of books. And the reason why is I know many of us, when we think about storytelling, we think about books and we think about the book we might want to write. And I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the different books and the way storytelling comes into play. And I know I've touched on this in some of the other episodes, but I wanted to just hone in on it in this episode because so many of you have books that you want to write, have stories you want to tell. Something has been holding you back, maybe. Maybe you have started something, but you just haven't finished it. Maybe you've got that, like I was mentioning, that whole shiny thing syndrome where you're like, oh, the next story idea, and you haven't finished the one that you're working on. Perhaps you're afraid. We all have that. Perhaps you're not getting support from your family. There could be a lot of different things that are preventing you from writing your book. And for those who are watching, who have written their book, congratulations. If you've written multiple books, extra kudos, hats off, because so many people don't ever finish their book. Whether or not you've published it, the fact that you finished it is amazing. So congratulations to you. However, I do know there are many of you who have been thinking about it and dreaming about it and wanting to do it, and you haven't done it. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some different types of books to try to demystify the whole process piece, to really show you that you already know how to tell a story and you can finesse some of the other pieces, but you can write your own book. So let's go over genre fiction books first. So fiction in general. And literary fiction. So we'll throw that in there, genre fiction and literary fiction. If you are wanting to write one of those, which many of us do, and many of us can write nonfiction and fiction. So don't think that just because you've written one thing before that you have to stick with it. I primarily write genre fiction, but I'm looking at doing literary fiction. And I never thought I could do literary fiction. I realized it was just my own fear that was holding me back. That who said I couldn't? But it was me kind of going, well, I don't know if I could ever do that. It doesn't matter how long you've been writing, how old you are, whatever. You are still going to always have those moments that you kind of go, wow, I was really didn't think I could do that or didn't think that was possible. And it is. So when we think about fiction, obviously we think about make-believe, but remember, we talked about how you can use your own experiences in fiction. And the reason why that's so powerful is because it's that authentic quality, like we discussed. Readers can tell when you're bringing something to them authentically. It doesn't mean that you had to have gone through the same exact thing that your characters did, but the emotion that you bring to it is genuine. So for my first ever book, my main character had her father killed. My dad was not dead at that time, but my mom had died. So I was able to use those emotions, those feelings, and everything else that my character was going through for her father, even though my mom had died. Then there's also things where maybe my cancer struggles I've been able to put in when somebody's struggling with something else. So I don't mean that the being authentic and genuine means you have to actually have done exactly what your character did. You don't. But what you're bringing to it is real. And that's what people feel. You, as the author, can write whatever story you want, especially when it's fiction, right? But the thing that you want to bring to it is something that you are so excited to write. Remember how we talked about whether or not you're a pantser or a plotter and figuring out the writing method that really lights you up and gets you going. So you want to be excited about what you're writing. The reason why I mention this is if you do find that you're pushing yourself to write this book and something else really is calling you, and it's not the shiny toy syndrome, it's that you're like, I'm just not feeling this. Listen to your gut. Really listen to it. Because a lot of times we try to push ourselves to do something that we think we should. And we've already invested some time in it and it's not working out. So really listen to what is going to light you up, because you can tell when you read a book from an author that they were super excited to write, that they were invested, that they were behind it. They were really in it. Think about those series that you have read where the first two books might be like really, really good. And then you get to like the third or the fourth, and you can tell that the author kind of fell out of love with what they were doing. But they probably had publishing contracts, so they had to keep on popping out the books for this particular series, even though they weren't really that interested in it anymore for whatever reason. And you can tell, you can feel it. A lot of times when I see that happening, I start to see things being repeated and stuff happening by rote and not as much complexity and emotion. You don't want to ever get that way. So you want it to be a story that really gets you excited to write it. And you already know the storytelling aspects that we've talked about. We've talked about the outer journey of your characters. So what's the big picture thing that they're striving for? They're trying to save the world. Are they trying to rescue an artifact? Are they trying to put their parents back together that have been separated? They want them back together. Whatever it is, what's that big picture thing? And then the inner journey, which is how your characters are changing and growing and shifting because of the different trials and challenges and experiences that you're giving them throughout your book. So when you think about those things, the inner and the outer journey, and taking your reader on a journey, remember, that will help you when you start thinking about the storytelling aspects. It's not rocket science. It really isn't. And there's plenty of books out there that will go through how to plot your book. We'll talk about character development. We'll talk about all the different nuances like body language and subtext and description and all of those types of things that will help you and give you the tools for your book. But at its heart is the story that you want to tell, regardless of any of the tools that you learn to finesse it and make it better, or to learn different things, or to spend time on different things. Because there might be some aspects that you're like, I never really thought to spend a lot of time on the description. I just kind of told you where they are. Well, the description can actually give so much insight into the story, into the characters, into how they're looking at where they are, what they're thinking about where they are, how that place affects them. There's so many different things you can do. Those are things that you can learn and grow as a writer into. So don't get scared that all of a sudden you can't do all these little things that you have to do for a fiction book. You're not hitting it. You're not hitting everything. Just concentrate primarily in the beginning on the story you want to tell, because then you can finesse it through the editing process. And as you're learning, because I always say it's great if you're just writing in general, just to get it out there. It's fabulous. But I found once I took my first writing class, that's when I really started understanding what I needed to put together in order to have something that was going to resonate with readers, that I could publish, that I could hopefully get an agent with. It was all those different aspects at that point. But at the heart of who I was always writing. And I wasn't thinking about the description of the body language or the subtext or the character arcs or development or anything else. I was just thinking about, I really had this story I wanted to tell and I wanted to tell it. And so I don't want you to get overwhelmed like a lot of people do, saying, I need to know all the different points before I can put this down. Just start putting it down, because in the process of editing, that's when you can really refine your storytelling. And you can add in different things that you're learning in order to make the storytelling more robust, that pops more, that draws in your readers more, that makes them connect with your characters more. You can build on that. But at the heart is the story you want to tell. So don't let yourself be stopped by fear. Just start writing, get it down. I would highly suggest, if you haven't already taken any writing classes or courses online or whatever it is, check some out. Take a look at some. If you can go to any conferences that so many are virtual now, writing conferences. They have classes as well and presentations. The one I went to recently for the PNWA was virtual, and it's our local association that I help out with. They're great folks. There were some wonderful presentations. There was one on how you build a complex villain. You can still build a villain on your own without that class, but it just talked about some of the complexities that you can put in there and some of the things to think about. There's always more to learn. I'm going to tell you that no matter how long you've been writing, there's always more to learn. But at the heart, it's a story you want to tell. Don't get worried about having to hit all the pieces, or that it needs to be a bestseller, or how are you going to get it out there and publish. Don't even think about that yet. Think about the story that you want to tell, because that will start you writing and keep you going and get you excited. Because if you don't have something finished, it doesn't matter if you know how to publish it or don't know how to publish it or how to get an agent. Those are things that you can learn and you can get help with, whether or not it's a course. I'm a writing coach, whether or not you go to a writing coach about that so that they can help you know the steps for publishing, both traditional and self. There's writing groups you can belong to. You might have buddies that have been published. There's things that you can learn, but at the heart, make sure that you tell your story and get it out there. And it's something you're excited to do. And it keeps you writing, because that's the main thing. There are so many things to derail you from writing. And if you can be excited about what you're doing, that is beautiful. And with fiction, that tends to be very easy for people to get into and to start writing. Tons of fiction writers. Though I do have some friends that are like, I can write a research paper, but don't tell me, don't tell me to write a fiction story. So that might be you. So if that is you, and you're thinking, you know what? I think I want to do memoir instead, because I want to tell my personal story. Memoir is nonfiction. However, it employs many, many, many fiction techniques. And I tell my students this, that it's great that you're telling your personal story, but if you don't make it compelling, organized well, you don't use good body language and description and dialogue and all those types of things, people aren't going to want to read it. So it's got to have a lot of those aspects of fiction. So for memoir, though, you might be thinking, okay, that's a little bit harder on the storytelling front, because it's not so much we're starting out with a character and then we get to the end and this has happened. What do I do with that and the storytelling? We've talked a little bit about this along the way, but with memoir, it is about your life. It's about your experiences. It's about the lessons you've learned. It's about the mistakes you've made. So with my memoir clients, I always talk to them about, what do you want your reader to feel when they come away with it? So they read your book, they closed it, and they put it away. How do you want them to feel? And for many of my clients, they want their reader to feel empowered, that they can do it, whatever that is. They can do whatever they have done. They want their reader to feel like they are not on an island, that other people have gone through this, and it's okay that they screwed up in their head. They're thinking, I screwed up and whatnot. That we all make these decisions with the best information we can. Maybe that's the theme. Don't get down on yourself for past regrets, because you were doing the best you could with what you had. It could be a lot of different messages that people can walk away with. So when you think about how you want people to feel, so say you want them to feel empowered. So the stories of your life that you want to include are going to be stories that show that theme, that empowerment theme. So it could be how you lost your job and you found another one, even though there was nothing to be had, but you decided to work your contacts. You never gave up. You went 2 towns over and found something. You found something online. You took a course and learned something in order to get a job, whatever it was. You might include a story like that. You might include a story about watching your mom go through something and come out the other side, and you were like, I'm going to be like her. And then you messed up, like we all do, right? There might be a whole bunch of different types of stories that you can use to show about how you became empowered. Because your memoir is sharing your story and your experiences in order to communicate whatever your message is. And ultimately, even though people want to entertain with their memoir, most people, I would say, everybody I've seen has a reason they wrote it. And it's not just because they wanted to make a lot of money. Their why is to help other people, to educate other people, to share what happened so that people realize that that type of stuff shouldn't be stigmatized. It's okay. That, oh, we all go through this, whatever it is. And that's why they're writing their memoir. So depending on how you want to organize it, remember we talked about the fact that you could organize it maybe by experiences that you had in order to illustrate that message, by times of your life that you had, if you want to tell it chronological or not. Maybe you're also going to include in your memoir other things that will help enrich it. So maybe in your memoir, you're going to include some pictures of your diary entries, or maybe you're going to include pictures of your who you were at that time in your life, or people in your life, or ticket stubs, or whatever it is. There's all these different things that can tell the overall story, because even though it's stories as you go along, the overall is the theme. And so don't feel like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do. It's all little stories. It's all little stories along. So just think about what you want the person who's reading it to feel at the end, where you're going with it. Figure out what stories might illustrate that point, and start looking at where they might fit. Start seeing how you might want to organize it, what feels good to you. I've had some clients that have told me that they don't want to do it chronologically. They want to jump all over the place. Other people want to do it chronologically. Some people are going to do it by lesson, which I thought is interesting. And the lesson that they learned, and then they're doing their stuff. Now, memoir many times bleeds over into personal development. There's a lot of memoir personal development hybrids out there. And usually what happens is someone starts writing their memoir, and then they realize that they've got all these steps and lessons to do X, Y, and Z. And then they go, well, gosh, this is kind of personal development too. And that's okay, because personal development, the really good personal development books, are chock full of personal stories. Otherwise, it's just a manual. I mean, when you have a manual that tells you how to do something or to use a particular piece of equipment, there's no personal stories in there. It's just like, you go here, you do this, you go here, you do that, you do that. Anybody can put out a manual. It doesn't matter who put it out with that particular piece of equipment. It goes along. But with a personal development book, why would you buy a personal development book on maybe selling real estate from Joe as opposed to Susie? It's going to be their personal stories that get you. So not only with the advertising up front, like we've talked about on social media or in business or advertising or marketing, that are going to get you, but when you're looking at the book and you're looking at the first few pages on Amazon, if somebody's engaging you right away with their own personal story of something that happened when they, ended up getting into real estate at 5 by doing something silly, right? Or do like selling a little piece of something, whatever it is. That's going to make you go, oh, and so maybe you are buying it from Joe as opposed to Susie, because Joe's got some really interesting stories. Susie sounds like everybody else. So personal development and any of those types of books have the personal stories of the person who is trying to teach you. Because inevitably, the reason why they know how to do whatever they're trying to teach you how to do is because they've gone through things that have shaped them, have changed them, that they've learned from to get to this point. They didn't just wake up and all of a sudden know how to sell a multi-million-dollar house. or to flip a house, or to get their finances under control, or to lose the weight that they needed to lose, or whatever it is, having a 6-figure month. They didn't wake up and just know that. They had to learn it, and they had to go through these hard times. Usually they had to fall on their face. So it's those personal stories that help get the reader invested to do those steps. Because if you're not invested in that person and what they're telling you and kind of really engaged with who they are, you might not want to do their steps. And then that doesn't help anybody. That doesn't help the person who wrote the book. It doesn't help you. You need to get that reader engaged and also take them on a journey as well. So a lot of times you have the memoir personal development where it's a hybrid. You start out with memoir and then you realize that you have a lot to tell. That's totally fine. You can do what you want, especially if you're self-publishing. Where it gets a little bit more tricky is when you're trying to go the traditional publishing route and you've got to fit in a publishing house box. And that's a whole nother ball of wax to get into, but we won't get into that on this. But just know, don't think, oh my gosh, I got to just stick memoir. I just got to stick to personal development. If yours ends up being a crossover where you've got elements of both, it's totally fine. Most good books do have a little bit of elements of both of those. When you're doing a personal development book, it still has a lot of memoir elements. The thing too is that what's great with storytelling when it comes to a personal development book is not only are you going to have your lesson, right? So you've got whatever steps you need people to take in order to get to have the outcome that you've promised, whatever that is. So you've got that as the framework, and that's a little bit of a journey that you're taking them on. But then the stories you're including also take them on the journey as well. So maybe the first part is like you're really understanding your audience, and then you're explaining how you didn't, and you went out there and you were throwing spaghetti against the wall and seeing what stuck, and it was just such a waste of time. And then you ended up getting people coming to you that weren't even like your tribe of people to teach, and it was just a mess. And so you're talking about how it's important to know your audience up front and who you want to connect with. And so then you're including all those little stories, and then you're taking them to the next step and the next step. Usually with personal development books, they're going to be organized a little bit more in building. So it's going to be, what do you need to know? How do you need to get there? What do you need to be doing in order to get to the end? They're not going to tell you the stuff at the end right at the beginning, because maybe they need to get you in the right mindset first. When I did one of my courses, Storytelling to Success, and it was about storytelling on social media, the first thing I led with was mindset, because I needed people to get in the right mindset to be doing it, because I can tell you all the tips and how to organize things and how to do the storytelling. But if you're not right mindset to tell your story, then it's not really going to help you get there. So you'll usually see the personal development books organized to build along the pathway. And that's all it is there. So don't get overwhelmed there. So memoir, it's just the little snapshots to get your message across of your stories. Personal development, you already know what you're going to teach somebody, right? You're going to map that out because you're like, I want to write a book about X, and this is what they need to know. So that's like half the battle right there. And then it's just your personal stories to support those steps. And whatever else you want to include. So maybe you want to include graphs to show other people who have done something similar, or how many people fail at XYZ, but you're going to teach them how to do it differently. Maybe it is pictures of you at different times. Maybe it's when you made your first buck off of whatever you're doing. Who knows what it is? Maybe it's pictures of your old hometown. Maybe it's the car you slept in, whatever it is. So there can be a lot of different aspects in personal development books as well, but just break it down. It's not overwhelming. It really isn't. You can do this. Just remember, at the heart, it's the story that you're telling. You're telling somebody that they are going to be able to do what you did if they follow these steps. They're going to be able to see results like you did if they follow these steps. So I know a lot of times people can get this like deer in the headlights thing with Sure, I want to write a book, but I don't even know. I have no idea what to do or how to do it. You do need to learn a lot of the other steps when you're getting closer to looking at getting published and whatnot. But those are things you can learn. And you can go to experts that have that information. You can read books, you can take classes. But at the heart, it's always the story that you're telling and the storytelling. And so let that be your guide in order to get things flowing. Because once you get things flowing, then you're also going to know what you have. And you can't edit a blank page. That's a famous quote from somebody. I can't remember who that is now, but you can't. You have to have something down there. So get it down there. You can learn the rest. Don't let not knowing all the different aspects or components of a book and how to do it stop you from actually writing, because you have a story to tell. You're going to be inspired by it, right? That's why you want to do it. Think about your why, because even with fiction, everybody's got a why. Think about your why and why you want to do it, and just start and then keep going. I highly suggest just at least 15 minutes a day. Everybody's got 15 minutes. And if you do that 15 minutes a day, then you keep your creativity faucet flowing. I find the longer that you stay away from what you've written, the harder it is to get back into it again, because your mind's not there. But if you're writing a little bit each day, your mind's still thinking about it. And you're going to start to think about it when you're at work, when you're driving, when you're doing something else, when you're cooking dinner, when you're washing dishes, when you're taking a shower, whatever it is, it's going to be percolating in your brain, and you're going to keep yourself excited, and you're going to keep yourself motivated to write it, because it's happening. You're in it. It's not something that you shut the door on. You're in it. And so it'll keep you going. So that's one of my suggestions as well to leave you with. So I hope you have enjoyed this storytelling series. I hope it gave you some great ideas. I hope it motivates you. I hope it inspires you. I hope it takes you further down your storytelling journey. And remember that you have your own unique voice. And there are people that are waiting to hear your story. And I'll leave you with this. Think about a book that you read that changed your life. How would you have felt if that author said, you know what, I don't know if I want to write that book. I'm a little scared to write it. I don't know everything about writing that book. I don't know if I want to put myself out there and be so vulnerable. I don't think I should write it. What if they hadn't written that book? What if they had let fear stop them? What if they hadn't written it and you never had that change that you had? So there are people out there waiting to read your story, whether or not it be fiction, nonfiction, memoir, personal development. There's somebody waiting to read your story. Don't deny them that opportunity, because all our voices need to be heard. Well, it was wonderful once again. I hope you are all doing well and having a wonderful creative journey. And until next time, I will talk to you later.